Welcome everyone to the second weekly call for the Mandel kickoff. Thank you everyone for joining. We've got a nice large group of people here. Presentation from block producers, software development team, the Fractally team, ENF, EOS support, all across the board. We've got some representatives. So thank you everybody. Where we left off on last week was there's still some questions on the code strategy, whether it's going to be a 3.2 and 3.0 or 3.1, and what are the dates. Jungle reset is a big priority. In order for us to start testing, we need the Jungle testnet as well as the Kylan testnet. Between the last call and today, we've gotten the Jungle team already to confirm that that's something they can help with. The two possible paths are still in play. Is that right?
With the preference for 3.1 for everyone. There's a few venues on how to approach that, but no, still in discussion.
Okay, 3.1 for everyone.
Leaning towards that, yes.
Is still the okay.
I did get more information though. So actually, one thing would be to add is we've been speaking with the team for the API transaction lifecycle feature that I mentioned last week, which could be added, and the timelines do line up with what we were looking for. And so we would still be able to have, let's say, the release out roughly a month later than what we expected, which is quite acceptable.
So originally it was May 19th was kind of the target date. It's now looking like perhaps a month later than that would be the
sometime in June, but it'll depend as well, because if we're not enabling the hard fork functions, let's say we merge and we go to 3.1, and we have this API transaction lifecycle function added, we don't necessarily need to enable the hard fork functions right away to showcase that we're not running the block one repo.
Okay.
Because that function in itself would not be found in the block one repo. So by default, if that function works on the mainnet, then that means that we're not pointing to block one repo, because that function would not be in the block one repo. And so it would actually be a somewhat simpler from that consensus upgrade function, which then could occur later on.
Okay, so we would achieve the objective of signaling to the world that we're on our independent code base without actually having to do the hard fork.
But we still would want to at some point enable those functions, those functions that require consensus upgrade, or I guess what we call hard fork, but just being careful with the wording, because the hard fork is different in EOS than it is everywhere else. Consensus upgrade, let's call it that going forward, because there's no new token. I know this keeps getting brought up, etc. So we would be able to achieve that earlier without doing that consensus upgrade. And then the consensus upgrade pathway, I think we would still be going forward with, but that could occur maybe a few months later. So we would still have a little bit more time to do that. And going through those steps, as we mentioned last week, is still quite worthwhile when we're not under pressure of doing so, in order to be able to coordinate the process and refine our strategy, so that in the future, when it is useful and when we do want to do so, we've got a much smoother process that we've tested out and that we're comfortable with. So it would buy us a little bit of time. We would still be able to signal that we're not running the block one repo without necessarily having to do that. And so it makes it a little bit more flexible.
Great.
And like I said, the team says that they could deliver the final, let's say, a solution probably by the end of June. But we would have an RC and we would have test versions being deployed probably in May. And so it really doesn't add that much time so far. We haven't finalized yet, but we should be able to provide a better update by next week. So the API transaction lifecycle function would be able to be tested as early as they got a live version out, whatever they would call it, RC1 or something like that. That would likely occur closer to the end of May or mid-May. And then we would go through different iterations leading up to potentially a final version of that particular function sometime mid-June to end of June. Now that needs to align then with the merging of 2.3 to 2.3 and 3.0 to 3.1, and or depending on who's going to be doing that work, there's also the option of not even doing 2.3 and just going straight to 3.1. So that's still pending. So that's the part that I can't give an update on, because there are a few different people that are looking at providing this function.
So we estimated it would be 1 to 2 weeks before we would have. So we're still on track. We're only 1 week since our last call. So
that would likely occur prior to. So having 3.1 without API transaction lifecycles would probably be pre all of that. And so then we'd be able to add API transaction lifecycles in. And so it doesn't seem like it would add any delays. Actually, it would still line up very well.
We need to collect some arguments for keeping 2.3. There are not so many reasons.
There's no argument for keeping 2.3. One of the options is that we don't even do 2.3. Yeah. It might be that one team actually does 2.3 and then somebody merges, which would be simpler. Or if the team that did 2.3 just doesn't do 2.3 and just does 3.1, then we don't have 2.3.
I think the only argument for keeping 2.3 is that if through this investigation on the feasibility of the 3.1, we find out that it's going to take way longer than we expected. So it's going to delay our ability to give that signal to the world that we're independent.
So these are not technical reasons. We talked about this before. There's no technical reason as to why we need to do a consensus upgrade. So those of you who are technically minded and are questioning why, I agree with you. There's no reason for you to do so. There are reasons outside of that why this would be important.
But it also means that nobody will use 2.3, even if it's released.
Yes, those who use the functions like block trimming, would continue using 2.3 and or not upgrade at all, but some would. But in order to signal that we're no longer using the block one repo, then likely the enabling of those functions so that it does become a consensus upgrade would now become a greater priority. And so if you didn't upgrade, then you'd be falling behind. You would no longer be in line with the mainnet.
EOS Nation, we would have to run 2.3 because we run diffuse, but we wouldn't run 2.3. If 3.1 is available, we just go straight to 3.1. If 3.1 is available, then I don't think anyone will be running 2.3. I agree.
We're trying to avoid that situation, Stan. That's where we're going.
It's one or the other. If 3.1 is there, 2.3 is out. Jungle reset. We've already had Bodan from the Crypto Alliance. Thank you. Confirm that they're preparing the scripts for the Jungle 4. Anything you can speak to that?
It's probably not the reset, but running the new chain in the moment. We will keep the Jungle 3 probably for the half a year, 60 months, because many are using them and requiring time to migrate. So we will start from the 2.0 launch that chain Jungle 4 on the 2.0 version and with all features that was available on 2.0. Also, I think we will start Jungle 4 without initial token distribution because it looked like was not required previous time, and it just take a time and use resources which is not needed. Yeah, I'm working on the bootstrap scripts. We'll prepare them. We will start the BIOS node and launch everything, and then share information for everyone to connect, how to connect like Genesis file. Probably the same as we did for Jungle 3. We will try to do this during finish preparing during this week and be ready for the next week, I think.
Oh, great.
As I know, the next week should be Mandel repository will be available. Yeah.
But I think the idea, and let me know if you agree, is to start with the Block 1's 2.0, launch Jungle 4 with correct. That. And then, we can go through the upgrade process. For the 1.8 upgrade, we distributed a survey to basically developers and exchanges to get feedback on what they're running. And it was a good opportunity for us to kind of keep on top of the status that, are people aware of this upgrade, their requirements, and working on getting their nodes updated in time for the consensus upgrade. We didn't have a terribly large response, actually. We only had 17 people actually respond to this survey. Maybe simplify it this time and try to find a way to get more respondents. Once we've narrowed down our questions, we'll get it published, translated, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I need to review it. Basically, we need to ask questions where we break compatibility, right? Like state history, for example. State history of Mandel is adding a few new fields, so old state history readers might not work. So these topics are important. Also, if someone is running 2.1, we need to have some transition strategy for those who are using, like EOS Nation, using 2.1. But the good thing is that EOS Nation is running that, so transition strategy will be delivered by them, basically, right? But everything that is breaking, that might break, we need to pay attention to it and ask people.
Again, similar, in addition to the survey in 1.8, we had an article that basically pulled together all of the resources for any node operator or developer. This is a summary of the resources we provided for 1.8. Stan is working on doing the documentation. What are the impacts of the Mandel release? Target high volume applications and exchanges directly. So again, this is something that Randall and I have been discussing. Thank you, Randall. The EOS Nation, we've got a database of apps and exchanges, and I believe Randall, you said you've got also your own database and a CRM tool. We've got an intern on our team who's in the process of going through the database of all of the apps and exchanges and getting a contact information. We're trying to get an email address. When you want to submit a ticket to an exchange, what's the email address? Get those all kind of in our CRM. And when we're ready to communicate, when we have all of our resources assembled, we can reach out. In addition to that, there's going to be a lot of just boots on the ground. I'll coordinate with all of the top 21s and all the exchanges. But what's happening now is we're just basically building that list. Randall, maybe you and I can talk more offline about coordinating so we're not duplicating efforts. Maybe we can share what information we have and what information, kind of combine those resources. Ideally, what I'd like at the end of this is that we have some public resource that anyone can access. It's a public good for the community, like a contact list. We only make public what we're able to make public. What I have in mind for most exchanges have both public and private channels of communication. So that, whatever this public document would be the public channels of communication. So that there may be our internal CRM system that includes both public and private information. And then maybe there's a separate document that's public for, with just the bare minimum. We don't want all of the knowledge lost in the event that, something happens. We have someone in the future no longer able to participate. That contact information will be useful. Okay, so that's everything that kind of was in progress from the last call. There are some other items in our to-do list that I wanted to discuss today. There are a few things that we identified that we're going to need on the Kylin testnet power up. We're going to need to do the binary update. We're going to need the Kylin feature activation. And Nate, I don't know, maybe before we even go into that, did you want to speak to the two? So we talked about these already all on the last call. Since the last call, Nate added a couple of Kylin related issues. Can you speak to those, Nate?
Yeah, so basically there's two things that I noted that can be improved. The first is that Kylin.blocks.io was taken down because there is no Hyperion or history provided to them. I spoke with Saeed. He's happy to reset it up to where you can do historical searches. That's one. The other one is the faucet. I was doing a little bit of research before the call. It looks like EOS Laumau was really in charge of that. I don't know if they really exist anymore. Argentina has the faucet, but it only gives you 10 tokens. So if we can do something maybe to enable Argentina to allow more tokens, because 10 tokens isn't really enough to do a contract, I think that would be good. Or if we have other ideas, I'm open to that as well.
And for Laumau, yeah, they are quite active. So we can reach out to Zhao Yu and get... I guess that typically it was Asia and Laumau that were controlling the tokens. So Daniel, if you want to reach out to Zhao Yu, and then we have Asia on the call. Joe is here.
Yeah. And I've been talking to Dafang as well, he's happy to help coordinate anything we need to get done on Kylin. So,
and for Argentina, I don't believe that Matias is here right now, or Chile, but because of EVM, we're in daily communication with them, so we can also reach out to Matias.
We'll get our Hyperion back up and running. Does it need to be full history, or can it just be something to help feed recent queries? Obviously, I can spin a quick one up.
Yeah, I don't know if it requires that. He said either a V1 history or a Hyperion instance that he can just plug in.
Question is, do I need the whole 100 million blocks?
I don't think it would need to be full. Just to for somebody who is developing to
Igor, you
read the transactions.
335 perfect for that?
Yeah, we are working on 3.4, which will be compatible with Elasticsearch 8, which has been released 2 days ago, and has a lot of small breaking changes.
7 point whatever, so I'm good on that. But yeah, I can get a
but for new clusters, it would be great to upgrade. But the upgrade on the software side wasn't very easy. So I'm working in that that part is halfway there, and I also deployed a 3.0 RC for Kylie to test the state history changes. But I need to finish the Elasticsearch part first.
So it sounds like kind of two paths, maybe Igor and crew are getting the latest and greatest up and going. We'll commit, I'll at least get a partial one up and going. So we know we have something that
and we can see how it works to upgrade when you upgrade ship to 2.0.
Perfect.